A juror who served on the Derek Chauvin murder trial is now defending a decision after this picture of him surfaced online. Now, he was wearing a Black Lives Matter t-shirt that said, "Get your knee off our necks," a reference to George Floyd's death. Brandon Mitchell told the Minneapolis Star-Tribune that he does not even remember wearing the t-shirt and that it was taken during last year's March on Washington. He did not confirm or deny the authenticity of the picture to CNN. Jury consultant and attorney Alisyn Tuerkheimer joins me now. Alisyn, thanks for being with us. Let me first read these two questions that were on the questionnaire sent to potential jurors before selection. First, did you or someone close to you participate in any of the demonstrations or marches against police brutality that took place in Minneapolis after George Floyd's death? March on Washington was obviously in Washington. He answered no. Second question, other than what you have already described above, have you or anyone close to you participated in protests about police use of force or police brutality? He replied no to that. Are his answers problematic, and could there be grounds for appeal?
There could be grounds for an appeal, but more has to be known about what he was thinking and how he really conceived of that question and what went on. So it's not clear exactly, but just a no answer from that question doesn't mean that there's going to be the conviction tossed or a mistrial. I think more has to be learned about what he did and what he was thinking when he answered the question, because you're in court, you're answering questions, and his mind might not have been a protest, and it sounds like he said that it wasn't about police brutality or excessive force. So some of that has to be fleshed out before we can make some more overarching conclusions about what's going to happen.
Yeah, he said that this was 100% not about George Floyd, instead a commemoration, 57th anniversary of the March on Washington. Here, though, is the Reverend Al Sharpton announcing that March on Washington. Let's listen.
Well, we're going back this August 28th to restore and recommit that dream, to stand up, because just like at one era we had to fight slavery, another era we had to fight Jim Crow, another era we dealt with voting rights, this is the era to deal with policing and criminal justice.
So in announcing the march, he said it's the era to deal with policing and criminal justice. And by the way, he announced it at George Floyd's funeral. Floyd's family led physically the march. They spoke there as well. When a judge is making these considerations over his state of mind and what he knew, does that play a role in it, or is it exclusively what he interpreted that event and that day to be?
I think the judge has to take into consideration the totality of circumstances. So the judge is going to think about what was the main attraction of people coming to this event, what were they there for, how was it advertised, and then who spoke, who was there, and then he's also going to talk to this juror, most likely, if he convenes a hearing on the evidence that involve witnesses, and then combine the two and say, okay, what is this juror's subjective beliefs about what he did, what did he put on the questionnaire, and what did he say during voir dire? And then he has to decide whether that gives rise to the implication that this juror was either less than forthcoming or was not candid about his responses, or maybe even he was untruthful in trying to get on this jury. But there's a whole range of explanations that it's going to be up to the judge in a subsequent hearing to try to find out what was really going on.
When the judge is dealing with a case like this and a verdict that is so consequential, not just for a family, for a defendant, but for the country, as we saw in preparations for a potential hung jury or an acquittal, is there an additional degree of sensitivity to deciding or determining that a defendant did not have a fair trial, an impartial jury?
I think that might be a factor, not a big factor, because judges all the time make these determinations, or at least they have to weigh certain balances. Now, the jury and the decision is sacrosanct, and the judge never wants to, including Cahill, he's not going to want to second guess a jury's decision, but at the same time he has to think about the defendant's rights and whether Mr. Chauvin's right to a fair and impartial jury was violated by what happened here with this juror and some of the responses on his questionnaire, or I should say lack thereof, and what ultimately transpired. But there is precedence for this, so it's not exactly clear how this is going to shake out.
All right. Alisyn Tuerkheimer, thanks so much for your time and insight.
Thank you.
Alisyn.